Okay, a blockbuster trade happened. I was sitting in the movie theater ready for a movie to start, and all of a sudden this trade breaks. So sorry it's coming out a little late. Which, by the way, the movie I was going to see was Mickey 17. I'm going to have a review of that on the movie channel. If you're interested, click the link in the description below to hear my thoughts on that movie. But anyway, you're here to hear my thoughts on Geno Smith to the Raiders. Yes, you heard me correctly. Geno Smith to the Las Vegas Raiders. A blockbuster move, really. I mean, the Raiders, who had an extra third-round pick from the Devontae Adams trade, almost said Devonta Smith. No, Devontae Adams trade. They have that extra third-round pick. They send that to Seattle, and Seattle sends back a starting caliber quarterback who, my podcast co-host Kyle was saying should have been in the MVP discussion midway through the year. That's a bit much, but he's a really good quarterback and has probably been a top 10 quarterback both years he's been with the Seattle Seahawks. Of course, Pete Carroll, probably one of the biggest feathers in his cap as a head coach was when he decided to move on from Russell Wilson and start Geno Smith a couple years ago, and it worked out. Smith was very good. So what happened? How does a trade like this happen? Well, so the Seahawks wanted to extend Geno Smith. That was what they were initially doing. And I'm not sure if there was something where Smith didn't want to play on a 1-year deal and was saying, you know what, I'd rather go somewhere. I'm not going to play on a 1-year deal. You have to give me an extension or I'm not going to play. And they just couldn't make the money work. It feels like there's something there because a 1-year, $15 million contract, which is what the Raiders are getting, is usually not what happens with quarterbacks. Like, usually you have to pay a lot more, even for just a mediocre quarterback. Remember, Jimmy Garoppolo a couple of years ago got $24 million a year by the Raiders. Now you're getting a better player for significantly less money. Now, Geno Smith is going to be 35 this season, so he's not a young player, right? But you're getting a good quarterback for basically nothing. A third-round pick. Listen, third-round picks, when it comes to other players, matter. When it comes to quarterbacks, that's nothing. Quarterback is such an important position. A third-round pick essentially doesn't matter. And again, it's the pick they got from trading Devontae Adams to the Jets. So, yeah, I mean, it's you wonder a little bit, is this them doing Geno Smith a bit of a solid of saying, hey, you're in a situation where maybe you want to go back to Pete Carroll? Is that what Geno Smith said? Did he want to go to the Raiders? And that's kind of how it worked out. But let's take it from two different perspectives. Let's go from the Raiders first, who, all of a sudden don't look that bad, right? I mean, we'll see what happens. Again, 35-year-old quarterback. You can't get too excited just yet. But you have Jacoby Myers, you have Brock Bowers, you have Michael Mayer. They could probably still use another receiver. Trey Tucker's in the building, but you could probably still use another receiver or two. But I don't think the offensive line's horrible, although they did just lose an offensive lineman, if I remember correctly. I heard a story. I didn't fact check that though, so I could be wrong about that. But I thought as long as the I didn't eat the onion, I believe they lost an offensive lineman as well. But still, you have weapons offensively. Geno Smith has shown he can be an effective quarterback when he has weapons. The defense, I still think they need to get some secondary players to make this work. But all of a sudden, the Raiders feel like they could be a competitive team for a team that, again, has not won a playoff game in, 23 years at this point. To be able to have a chance, I mean, that's pretty cool. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Again, they're picking 7th, so, why... do you want to get Shedeur Sanders? Maybe, but you don't have a great opportunity here. You have Geno Smith available, only spending a third-round pick. It's just a smart move, in my opinion. From the Seahawks, I have questions, I guess, about this Seattle team, who now is essentially without a quarterback. I mean, Sam Howell is in the building. He's not a horrible, hey, let's, have him as a plan B, I suppose, going into a season. When you don't have a good quarterback situation, he's certainly not someone you would want to, go out and trust to be a starter. You had, you got rid of Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf has requested a trade, and at this point, you have to trade him. I mean, you can't get rid of your starting quarterback, do this full rebuild, but not trade your star receiver as well. You got a full rebuild. You got to trade him as well. it's just interesting because Seattle was kind of caught in mediocre in no man's land, and I thought that with a new head coach they were maybe getting better, but I think what they're doing, and this almost makes me wonder if we're going to see a little bit of an NBA kind of thing going on in the NFL of them saying, you know what, we're not a bad team, and that's kind of a problem. We want to have a star quarterback to be able to go to the next level, or at least a good quarterback on a rookie deal. So we're going to tank for a year, and I do wonder if that's the logic. Again, I didn't think it made sense when they got rid of Russell Wilson and said, really, you're going to trust Geno Smith? And he worked out. So, hey, you never know. But it does feel like this is a move for the future. And again, for Geno Smith, I mean, he is going to be 35 next year. Okay, that's true. Quarterbacks don't usually play till they're 45. Tom Brady's the exception. Now, Geno Smith, I would assume, it's weird. I would almost assume he could play a little bit longer than your average quarterback because he was on the bench for so long of his career that he doesn't have the hits other guys do. Will that be the case? I don't know. He is a pretty good playmaker, despite the fact that you might not feel like that. He actually can make plays off script, but could that take a hit as he gets older? I don't know. But you should still get 3 or 4 good years out of Geno Smith. I mean, the idea that you think he's too old to work with does not fly for me. Again, the Seahawks now, they are not picking very high in the draft, so they are not going to be drafting a quarterback in the first round, certainly, or maybe they draft one, like, I don't know. Do they like Jalen Milroe enough to draft him when he falls in the first round? Probably not. Maybe you draft him in round 2 or 3, and there's other quarterbacks, there's this whole thing, right? But maybe you draft someone in the 3rd round, and then you just kind of go into the season, and if you stink, then you stink, and you can get a good draft pick. That probably is the strategy. But again, I think it has to be mentioned that they wanted to sign Geno Smith. They weren't just saying like, well, what are we going to do? They were trying to sign Geno Smith, and this wasn't a whole plan from the start. It seemed like they just couldn't get the contract together and essentially said, well, instead of having 1 year of Geno Smith's production or having Geno Smith on a contract we don't like, let's instead just deal him, get a 3rd round pick, and we can start to rebuild a year early. Which, I don't know, it's a bold strategy, and we'll see how it pays off. I mean, it could. But for the Raiders' perspective, you just feel like it's a huge one, especially for this year. $15 million for there's a lot of teams that should have done this move besides just the Raiders. Credit to them for saying, you know what, I don't care if he's a little older. Getting a good quarterback helps. Matthew Stafford was a little older when he went to the Rams. He worked out. Tom Brady was a little older when he went to the Buccaneers. He worked out. Now, those 2 teams had better teams around the quarterback than the Raiders currently do. But hey, I mean, Tampa Bay was 7-9 before Brady got there. And again, Geno Smith isn't Brady. I get it. But just saying, when you can upgrade the quarterback position for just a 3rd round pick, you upgrade the quarterback position. That's how I see it. So those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.